Formula One on 5 Live.
A week off from Formula One action, and the fraternity is back in action for the beginning of a double header before the August summer shutdown ensues. It's round 13 of the 2024 season, and we're in Hungary at the Hungaroring, about 12 miles northeast of a very hot Budapest, and a track that has been on the calendar every year since 1986. It's a mainstay that can deliver a cork of a race every so often, and the way this season has been going so far, predict if you dare. Leading you through all the coverage this weekend is myself, Harry Benjamin, and alongside me today in the commentary box for Free Practice 2 is also sport editor-in-chief Beck Clancy. Beck, 6 different race winners from the first 12 races so far this season. 6 seats still up for grabs for next year in Formula One, and we've still got 2 races to go until the summer break. Formula One's come alive in the last few weeks.
It's been really fun, hasn't it? This season started with a lot of naysayers thinking it would be another Red Bull, Max Verstappen dominant season, of them claiming everything. There was even the suggestion that they would win every single race this year. They obviously missed out on just the one in Singapore last year, but no, it has not been the case. We have had more race winners this season than 2022 and 23 combined, which is great, and I completely agree with you. Predict at your own peril.
Which is, something, if you'd have said that to me in Bahrain, I would have been chomping at the bit for it along with everybody else. It really is amazing how quickly things can change. Let's not kid ourselves, though. Max Verstappen is still very much leading the championship charge, and he has a gap of 84 points over Lando Norris. Verstappen sitting pretty with 255 points to his name. Then it's Norris. There's 2 Ferrari drivers, Leclerc and Sainz, and Piastri that rounds out the top 5. That's in the drivers. Over in the Constructors' Championship, it is also Red Bull leading the way, but that is where we could see some jeopardy coming, with the likes of Ferrari and McLaren in particular starting to find an upwards trajectory. Red Bull have an advantage at the moment of 71 points over Ferrari, with McLaren just a further 7 points behind. Then it's Mercedes and Aston Martin in the top 5. RB in a really heated fight now, with Haas over 6th in the Constructors' Championship. Alpine just behind in 8th. Then it's Williams and Sauber bringing up the rear. Sauber, the only team yet to get off the mark. And, well, it is blisteringly hot in Budapest at the Hungaroring. 31.2 degrees air temperature, just over 40 or almost 49 degrees track temperature, a decent bit of humidity as well. People trying to find a bit of shade underneath the trees that surround this circuit. It is absolutely packed, even for FP2. Do you like the Hungaroring? Decent race?
Love it.
Yeah?
Love Budapest as a city. Love this one. Traditionally, it was the last race of the first half of the season. Even though it's not now, and we still have Belgium to come next week, there is always that end of term feel to it. Everyone's a bit doolally. Everyone's absolutely exhausted after we've already had 12 races. We're at the halfway point now, 12 to go. Yes, it's brilliant. You stay in the city. It's about a half-hour drive outside to the track. So it's got a really good feeling to it. You know, in the evenings you go out for dinner, you drink, you bump into lots of people, you see lots of people. It's just a really good weekend, and we get good racing normally.
Yeah, we really have had some corker Grand Prix over the years. Also joining us is the BBC's F1 correspondent, Andrew Benson. Afternoon, Andrew. Well, we've had one practice session already, about to launch into the second one, and there is only so much you can tell from FP1. But what are the big headlines for you that you're looking out for this weekend?
Well, I think there's a couple of big upgrades on a couple of cars this weekend, particularly the Red Bull and the Aston Martin. I don't think either of those teams got a convincing answer as to whether they were a massive step forward in the first session. Obviously, that's only the first session, and there'll be a lot of data crunching tonight. It's still very hot here, Harry. It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I have to say, and I know Beck agrees with me, these late practice sessions are really quite annoying when you're trying to go out in the evening and enjoy Budapest. But
have you got a dinner reservation?
You're giving away all our secrets, Benny.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and shame you're not here, actually. But to come, or shame you're not able to come out tonight, anyway. But yeah, it's still 31 degrees, even though it's 5 o'clock in the evening, and so very similar conditions to what we'll see in the race on Sunday, assuming it doesn't rain. we'll keep an eye on those Red Bull and Aston Martin upgrades. Particularly Aston Martin don't look in a very good place at the moment, Harry.
No, we heard both Stroll and Alonso on the radio, didn't we, during free practice 1. As you say, Andrew, the big upgrade they're bringing was just on Alonso's car for free practice 1, and in order to run a back-to-back comparison, Stroll did not have the upgrades, but now he does for free practice 2. So we'll see if things get any better for Aston Martin, but both of them struggling to find a balance around this circuit. Just over 4.3 kilometres, 2.7 miles, 14 turns, 6 to the left and 8 to the right. 2 DRS zones, 1 down the main straight, and then a short dose out of turn 1 down towards turn 2. But the DRS effect is quite low here because it's only 610 metre long straight, and then it's less than half of that going down to turn 2. So getting that drag reduction system power is slightly limited around this circuit, but it has got some nice corners. That chicane, quite technical in turn 6 and 7 before you get the long arcing 8, 9, 10, the middle sector, the arc left, then right, almost centre S style, and then the long left-handers, and then the right-hander that see off turn 13 and 14 and a lap of this circuit. FP2 underway then, and for those who wish to do a sync, it is 58 minutes and 49, 48, 47 seconds, and already they are out in force. Nico Hülkenberg in the Haas straight out there. Of course, he missed FP1, made way for Haas's official driver for 2025, Oliver Behrman. And Behrman continuing his development program with Haas, and hands over the car now back to Hülkenberg, and Zhou Guanyu out there at the 2 Saubers along with Bottas, then Magnussen, Ocon, Gasly all heading out, indeed all of them streaming out. Charles Leclerc just making his way in the Ferrari out of the pit lane. But Beck, the big sort of grabber that all caught our eyes coming into this weekend was the extent of the upgrade that Red Bull have brought this weekend. Engine cover, halo, rear corner, front wing, front corner. It's the biggest upgrade of the season for them, at a time where we are starting to question, well, hang on, where's Red Bull's pace gone? Is this the answer? And where has it gone?
I think they'll certainly hope it's the answer, yes. They have looked like they've been struggling a bit recently. We saw at Silverstone, didn't we? Max Verstappen finished second, and he was absolutely delighted with that second place because he didn't feel that he had the car underneath him to get on the podium, actually. And he obviously qualified 4th that weekend, and he said that was great for him. He's not been very settled in the car. I still think the Red Bull is the best car on the grid. I think what we're seeing now is McLaren definitely closing the gap. Ferrari, they have really struggled since they brought their upgrade, which has actually turned out to be a downgrade in Spain. But they've obviously they've tweaked the floor slightly this weekend, and obviously Sainz went fastest in first practice. So that's looking good for them. They'll be very happy with the first set of data they've got out of that tweak. Verstappen, I think he will be looking for these upgrades. I mean, it's a lot. They've done a lot to the car. You just reeled them off there. So they're going to be looking at an awful lot. It didn't feel like they needed to do all of those. It's interesting that they've decided to bring absolutely everything here. And I guess we've only got 2 races before the summer break, so they're trying to get as much data as possible. It is only practice. We have raced at this circuit a lot. They know it very, very well. It's not like it's a new track, so it is actually a good place to bring out parts. It's only in Hungary. You know, most of these teams are based in the UK. They can just very easily get the parts out there. They truck them over. It's not too difficult for them in terms of, you know, in Europe is where we get a lot of these upgrades for that very simple reason, just the logistics of it all. So it'll be interesting to see how they go this weekend. If they can open up that gap, you know, at the start of the season, the Red Bull gap to Ferrari, McLaren, and definitely Mercedes was huge. And now we're seeing races finish. The gap used to be about 20 seconds. Verstappen would cross the line and then the next car would come over. But now, you know, the cars are in the same shot. It's seconds apart. So there is a bit of Red Bull struggling slightly maybe, but also I just think, we're looking at McLaren in particular, they have really closed the gap. That is amazing what they've done with that car.
They really have. 2 consecutive years on the trot for McLaren, really, where an upgrade has transformed that team's performance, now constantly challenging at the sharp end. So too can be said now for Mercedes, and the sound you're hearing is on board Lewis Hamilton, making his way round the right-hander of turn 11 and just running out wide over the curbs, quite aggressive curbs on the exit there when you run all 4 wheels off past the white line. I think it was in free practice 1, Alex Albon and the Williams did a similar similar thing and actually had a bit of carbon fibre fly off of his Williams, and the virtual safety car having to come out temporarily for a marshal to retrieve that stricken bit of Williams. So if you do run wide here, there aren't the walls aren't that nearby, but certainly the curbs will keep you punished. But McLaren on the rise, so too Mercedes as well, and they could be looking at 3 wins on the bounce come the end of this weekend, which no one's done so far this year. Unbelievably, you think Verstappen has, but that hasn't happened. We said Russell's win in Austria, okay, bit of luck, but he had to be in it to win it, literally. He had to be in the right place at the right time, and he was. Lewis Hamilton, absolutely no luck about that. It was skill, fantastic race on offer, multiple scenarios going on during that mixed condition British Grand Prix. And now we're coming to a track that Hamilton is the most successful at. 8 wins here, could make it 9. And the fact that I've been saying that suggests Mercedes are back in the game now?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say they're back in the game. It finally, after 2 years, 2 very long years, 2.5 years almost, actually, we're in July now, of them saying they don't understand the car, it feels like they actually finally do understand the car. And even at the start of this year, if you were to say which team would win 3 races in a row first, you'd never have had money on Mercedes, would you? They just did not look like they were in the fight at all. But that victory for Hamilton in Silverstone in particular, that was completely on merit. George Russell was on pole position there as well, completely on merit. That car is fast now. They really do seem to have got themselves together. They are absolutely in the fight. You would not at all be surprised to see Mercedes on the podium for the rest of the year. And it's really interesting. Oh, Verstappen radio.
My brakes are not working. They're not biting.
Verstappen just saying my brakes are not working, they're not biting on his first proper push lap out there. He's just making his way through the final corner now. He's on the medium tyre. Indeed, everybody is on the medium tyre, with the exception of Oscar Piastri, who are out on the track at the moment, and Lando Norris. Verstappen crosses the line, and on that opening gambit goes 5th fastest. Perez, his teammate, currently fastest.
So on Hamilton, he won for the 9th time at the British Grand Prix, the first driver to ever win 9 times at a single track. He's now looking to do that again, as you mentioned, here at the Hungaroring. That is quite an extraordinary record. And, you know, 2 things. One, it shows that he is still hungry. He still has the fight in him with Mercedes. But also that Mercedes are now, they are developing the car. And there was a bit of chatter that wasn't there about maybe some conspiracy theorists thinking that actually George Russell is being favoured and Hamilton wasn't getting the parts. And I think you have to say, you can understand that because Hamilton's leaving. He's going to Ferrari next season. He is going to very slowly, or perhaps not that slowly, be left out of debriefs, be left out of engineering meetings looking ahead to developments which are going to be on the car for next year. Russell will naturally start to be favoured within the team, and that's completely normal. But I think we can see now what's happening with Mercedes and with Hamilton and with Russell. They are still fighting together, not with each other. They are still in it for the team and driving that team forward. And the thing about this is, with the Constructors' Championship, well, okay, Red Bull should win it, and we'll come on to Perez and his role in that, but Mercedes are going to start taking points out of Ferrari, is going to start taking points out of McLaren, and they'll also start taking points out of Red Bull. This season is actually still wide open.
And I honestly can't believe we're saying that. Okay, the drivers maybe not so much, but certainly in the Constructors' Championship it is. And you just look at a Mercedes back-to-back wins, having not scored a podium in the first, a Grand Prix podium in the first 8 Grand Prix of this year. And suddenly, almost like a flick of a switch, they found that North Star that they've been looking for the last 2 seasons. And it's brilliant because we won multiple cars in the fight. Now you've got McLaren back up there. Ferrari won't be far behind. As you say, they have taken a bit of a slump. That development race just as important as the on-track racing too. Carlos Sainz topped FP1, so it's an encouraging start, but it is only free practice 1. We'll know a little bit more about all of the drivers and teams' race pace come the end of this session. Don't you worry, we'll bring you all the updates on that. At the moment, Perez is currently fastest, 2/10 clear of Russell. Then it's Hamilton, Ricciardo and Sainz, the top 5. And we're just seeing a replay of Yuki Tsunoda being let out of his pit box and actually clipping the traffic light system on his way out. Didn't quite fully fold back up on itself and just touched the rear wing of the RB. He did slow down. Didn't seem like that did too much damage, but there'll be looking at that and hoping that doesn't happen again. And actually, I mean, the most exciting thing about Formula One right now is the driver market, let's be honest. As well as that fighting on track, we love driver market chat. And normally at this time of year, we'd start to be ramping it up. Last year, there was nothing going on. It was quiet. It was the first time that all the drivers that ended the season began the next one. Apart from, we had the mid-season change with Ricciardo, which of course is a year on to the day where he replaced Nick de Vries in that RB team. Lewis Hamilton kind of kicked off the driver market way back at the start of the year. And just on that, it's so easy to ask this question, I know, but when you look at Ferrari suddenly having a bit of a downturn and then Mercedes suddenly now on the up, do you think he's looking at that and going, oh, okay, have I gone a bit too soon here? Have I gone too early?
Let me tell you, it's an easy question to ask. It's not an easy question to ask to Lewis Hamilton. And he does not like the question. He definitely does not like the question. It's fair. You can understand why people are asking it. When he made the switch at the time, I think it was February 1st, and we were finding out. And it was that feeling of, well, why would you go to Ferrari? Because they ended last year pretty much on a par. We had that battle, didn't we, for second in the constructors, only a few points between them. It was kind of jumping out of one second place team going into another second place team. You know, there wasn't much in it, and then Ferrari came out fighting much stronger, looked much stronger. Mercedes still hadn't got their head around their problems. And then suddenly he looked like a genius because maybe he'd foreseen all of this and Ferrari were the team to go to. And then obviously, as I said, they brought that downgrade, as it were, to Spain, and they've had this slump, and Ferrari don't look quite as competitive. And Mercedes have obviously just had the 2 back-to-back wins. So has he made the wrong decision? No, come on. This is Formula One. It's a far longer game than that. He definitely doesn't appreciate the question, and he answers it very straight with, you know, he basically doesn't answer it, if we're completely honest. And I think that's fair enough, because he is being shown with Ferrari, I'm sure, what the 2026 plans are. The next big set of regulations, the next big change that we're going to have. It's the same as when he moved from McLaren to Mercedes. Everyone was really surprised about it. He went in a year before the big regulation changes of 2014, so 2013 was his first season with Mercedes. Everyone was questioning what he was doing, but he'd been shown the plans. He completely bought into what they were doing for 2014 and the hybrid engines and getting ahead of that. And he's obviously having the same conversations with Ferrari. He's looking into the long game. So it's great that he got this win. You know, absolutely everybody was behind him. I mean, genuinely, everyone was really happy for him in the paddock. It's not very often you get that with race winners. I was saying that, it was the same in Miami, actually, for Lando Norris. So, yes, I definitely understand the question, but he will dismiss it. I mean, he does dismiss it.
That's why I asked you.
It puts him in a very... He can be in a very good mood. You ask him that question, and it puts him in a very bad mood.
Yeah, I wouldn't ask that one to his face. But you also have to look at the end of the day, the contract that he was offered by Mercedes wasn't really what he wanted. And, you know, I think it was a 1+1, and that's not... You don't offer that to Lewis Hamilton, you know, no matter what stage of your career he's at. And Ferrari has obviously had the better contract offer. I'm sure there's a bit of extra dough in it for him as well. Not that it really
same
matters.
money.
Same money, really. But okay. But in which case, it's the emotion of going with the Scuderia after all these years, because Lewis Hamilton will finish his career with Ferrari, won't he? Surely?
Oh, almost certainly, yeah.
Andrew Benson, Lewis Hamilton to Ferrari. This is why I wouldn't ask Lewis Hamilton the question, but I feel like I can ask you, because you'll be just as blunt with me.
Well, he was asked twice at Silverstone. I think this is what Beck's referring to, and he basically said no both times, whether he regretted the decision, whether he was rethinking it after Mercedes' upstep in performance. I mean, look, Mercedes, and he was very curt, Beck's absolutely right. He doesn't like the question. Look, Mercedes created the problem, in inverted commas, of Hamilton leaving themselves. They wouldn't give him the contract he wanted. They offered him a 1-year deal initially. They came to a compromise on as you described it, Harry, a 1+1, and he exercised that option last winter to go to Ferrari. It was only 6 months after he just signed a new contract. He was the main focus of the driver market last year. Wolff was trying to make sure he didn't get caught out with this Andrea Kimi Antonelli guy, who's considered to be the next Max Verstappen, in the same way he'd got caught out with the original Max Verstappen, which if we rewind right back to 2014, Verstappen was on the market in Formula 3, it was obviously it was going to be something special, and Red Bull and Mercedes were both after him. Mercedes didn't have a spare seat at that time because they had Hamilton and Rosberg under contract, and Red Bull could give him a seat in Formula 1 in Toro Rosso, and they did. And so Verstappen accepted that because he wasn't prepared to wait around. And so Wolff sort of engineered himself backwards into losing Hamilton because he didn't want to lose Antonelli, or he wanted to have some flexibility with Antonelli. But I'm not sure whether that was the wisest strategic choice, given how young Antonelli is, and given that once you've got the guy under contract, you're sort of in control of him. But anyway, I can see why, in that context, you can see why Hamilton did what he did. Ferrari definitely ended last season in a stronger place than Mercedes. Yes, Mercedes beat them to second place in the Constructors' Championship, but only just. They managed to fend off Charles Leclerc at the end of the season after a very strong sort of last third by Ferrari. And as Beck said, Ferrari started this year stronger than Mercedes. So until this sort of very recent Mercedes upgrade and very recent Ferrari downgrade, it did look like a smart move. I think if you're looking forward to 2026, you'd have to bet on an engine manufacturer probably being in the best position for these new regulations, because these new... Harry, I think you need to take over. Charles Leclerc's just had a crash.
He has indeed. We've seen a few drivers pushing in the last lap, and it is Charles Leclerc, talk of Ferrari, who has found the wall and come to a stop approaching the right-hander of turn 5. He's in the runoff of turn 5, so he's come through the quick left-hander, blind left-hander of turn 4. We haven't seen the build-up to the accident, but he is stopped. He has taken the steering wheel out. Red flag straight away, so everybody else comes into the pit lane. He said he's okay on the radio as he gets out of his car and puts his steering wheel back in. So we'll get a replay of it and let you know how that happened, but I have a feeling he's lost it coming through turn 4, and he's made contact with the wall front left side. Bit of front wing gone, certainly a bit of front left damage. All 4 wheels still on that Ferrari, but these early stages in free practice 2 to have a crash like that is not what you want from your driver. And concerned faces of Fred Vasseur and the pit wall at Ferrari in the pit lane, but Leclerc out and safe from that incident and walking away and just looking, I think, for a lift back to the pit lane now. But that's costly for a practice incident. This is the sound of it, building up, uphill towards the left-hander of turn 4. And that's the sound of the crash. Comes through the left-hander of turn 4.
Oh, he splashed the wall. Rear left.
Yeah, ran out wide. We're just getting another view of it now. Turns in, ran out wide, gets turned around, actually does a full 60, goes in rear first, and then so it's not just the front left, it's the rear as well for that Ferrari. The rear goes in first, swings that Ferrari back round into the front left, and then comes to a stop in the runoff of turn 5. Not what Charles Leclerc needs, Beck.
No, that was a bad one. He looks like he just lost the rear going over the curb and, slams backwards into the wall. So that is his practice session over, and 40 minutes of running time that Ferrari have now lost out on, which is very valuable, and they will not be happy about that. Yeah,
Ferrari are running some upgrades to their floor as well this weekend, but for Charles Leclerc, who's only scored 12 points in the last 4 races since that magnificent Monaco Grand Prix victory, have since had a bit of a downgrade in terms of performance. It's not all been down to car performance. Charles Leclerc wrapped up in an incident on lap 1 in Austria, and then the strategy and the mixed conditions at the British Grand Prix not going the way of the Monegasque. But the red flag is out because it's practice. The clock still counts down though, and once they clear that Ferrari, we will hopefully get back going. I wonder how long it will take to get that barrier repaired. It did just look like some advertising hoardings were hit, so I don't know if it will be too much damage there. But the tractor is out as they hoist the Ferrari up, and will remove that to behind the barriers in the nearest exit point.
I always love this bit. The car is currently hanging in the air, and you just know that the other teams have got their photographers running to the area to try and get as many pictures as they can of that floor. And everyone in Ferrari has got their heart in their mouth right now, thinking, please don't get a snap of that. But we've just had a great shot of it on the TV cameras, and it's just all the teams have spy photographers dotted around the tracks for this very moment when their rivals crash and the car gets hoisted up, and it's brilliant for them.
It's always, though, when Formula One looks most flimsy, isn't it? Because I liken it to, in the old school arcades where you'd use the claw and you try and pick up a little prize from the box, and it keep falling through the claw, through the claw's fingers. But that Ferrari very much stable, but it does look a bit flimsy as it gets taken away by the tractor. Charles Leclerc then back into the pit lane very speedily, the medical car picking him up and dropping him off as he walks rather forlornly back to the Ferrari garage, helmet well and truly on. The damage didn't look too bad. I mean, the rear we'll have to take a look at. The front wing easily repaired. It will be if there's any damage to the gearbox at the back or any underlying issues with the floor as well that Ferrari will want to take a further look at. But fairly high speed. It's one of the fastest corners on the circuit. Blind entry uphill as you come through the left-hander. But Charles Leclerc back into the Ferrari garage, gets a pat on the back from some of his mechanics, and will look to try and bounce back from that. But he'll relish the challenge, of course, for next year with Lewis Hamilton, won't he? How do you think that is going to go? Leclerc versus Hamilton.
Well, so he says. I mean, he is the de facto number one driver at Ferrari now, isn't he? I think that will have to change with Hamilton coming in. The teams love to say that they don't really have number one drivers. Mercedes definitely say that. Red Bull, obviously, they do with Verstappen. Ferrari claim they don't, but we know that they do. It's interesting, isn't it? Actually, Benson's probably the better one to talk on this. He interviewed him this week, and in that interview, Leclerc was saying that he's relishing the challenge of Hamilton coming in and being teammates and learning from him. And obviously, I guess it's all about mindset in terms of Leclerc is experienced. He definitely has it in him to be a world champion. And then you get the 7-time world champion coming in. You can either be threatened by that, or you can, as he seems to be, and certainly in the interview that he did with Benson, he seems to be embracing it and thinking, actually, what can I get out of this? Yeah. Which is good for the team. If that really is the attitude, and there's no reason to doubt that, but if that is the attitude he's going in with, what can I learn from? I mean, that's a real win-win for Ferrari. Yeah. Well, I mean, Andrew, you sat down with him for a feature interview. What were your takeaways?
Well, I think he's being honest. I actually think he's a very honest, direct guy, and that's one of the reasons I like interviewing him so much. I'm sure Beck finds him the same way. He's very straightforward. He's open, and he's also very willing to admit his own mistakes. And I think he's very, very, very fast, Charles Leclerc, and. And don't forget that the younger generation of drivers, Leclerc, George Russell, Lando Norris, Alex Albon, Max Verstappen, they've all raced against each other since they were really young. And he knows how quick he is compared to them. And I think he's probably looked at the way George Russell's performing against Hamilton and thought, I can do that, at least that myself. So I don't think in that way I don't think in terms of pure pace, he'll feel threatened. As a whole package, there's no question that Leclerc isn't there yet in the same way that Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton are. And so I don't know about you two, but I think when you combine sort of Leclerc's raw pace and Hamilton's experience, not only does it give Ferrari unquestionably the strongest driver lineup in the paddock, it's also absolutely tantalising for anybody watching, because that is going to be one hell of a battle to watch.
It certainly is, isn't it? And on the other side, Beck, for Lewis Hamilton, the greatest of all time, certainly in this generation, to come into Ferrari, a childhood dream for so many drivers that want to be in Formula One. But when you look at his stats against George Russell, he is being beaten, particularly in those qualifying results, as Andrew mentions. So do you think there's a bit of him that is thinking, I have to lay down the marker as soon as I get into Ferrari? Okay, Charles Leclerc has been the Ferrari boy since he joined, Ferrari Academy member, very much the golden child. But Hamilton's not going to allow that. He's going to ruffle some feathers.
Oh, he's going in to win. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you don't become the most successful driver in F1 history based on the statistics by being nice to the other person in the other side of the garage. I mean, we saw it, didn't we, with Mercedes, Nico Rosberg. They used to be childhood best friends, and well, they talk now, they're friends again, but they certainly weren't by the time that Mercedes relationship ended and Rosberg left, having won the championship in 2016, because it took everything out of him to beat Lewis Hamilton. And I think Hamilton will be going into Ferrari very much with the mindset of he wants his 8th World Championship. He felt like it was taken from him in 2021. And so he wants that 8th championship. He doesn't want to retire without it. That's very much what he's working towards. And if he has to upset a few people to get it, then he absolutely will.
We're just getting a look at some of the barrier repairs, and there is a bit more damage than we thought. It's not just advertising hoarding. There's a bit of a dent in the barrier, which they're now trying to take a look at and rebuild. So still under red flag conditions here. Andrew, Hamilton going to Ferrari, what does this mean for the backroom staff? Pete Bonington, Bono, his race engineer, long-time race engineer at Mercedes. Is there a chance that he could also make the switch from Mercedes to Ferrari? What do we know there?
I'm hearing no. Bono is not going to go with him, which is interesting. And I don't know about anybody else, but I think that's one of the biggest question marks for Hamilton going into Ferrari. Is it's an entirely new team, an entirely new culture, and an entirely new country. All the debriefs in Ferrari are done in English, so the language won't be a problem on that basis. The English is what they talk inside the team. Fred Vasseur, the team principal, doesn't speak Italian either. But, you know, it's very much Charles Leclerc's team. He's very integrated in the team. Of course, it's Lewis Hamilton. He'll be going in there and he'll have everybody's admiration and respect. But it's not the work of a moment to settle into a brand new Formula One team for anybody, and I think the difficulty with Ferrari potentially for Hamilton is it's a very political team. He'll have to get his feet under the table very quickly, and if he is behind Leclerc in over one lap particularly at the beginning, and there's very much a possibility, I'm not saying it will happen, but it's a possibility given how quick Leclerc is, then okay, he's still a 7-time world champion, he's still Lewis Hamilton, he's still the most successful driver in history, but everyone's judged by their current performance, and he will lose currency inevitably in that situation, so he's going to have to be very careful to make sure that doesn't happen.
But he does have Fred Vasseur on side. Obviously, Fred Vasseur is the one who brought him across. He was his team principal back in Hamilton's GP2 days, as it was then, F2 now. So it is political, as a lot of organisations are, but I think Hamilton will be given a bit more grace just because of that relationship. Maybe I'm wrong. What do you think, Benny?
Sorry, Bet, run that by me again. I was just looking at a bit of an email to do with an issue that we've got on the desk.
The fun internal politics of the BBC. There you go. I was just saying that he's got some, he'll have a bit of a grace in the sense of his relationship with Fred Vasseur, because obviously Fred was his GP2 team principal. They go back 20 odd years. They're very close. Obviously Vasseur was pretty much the architect of Hamilton going to Ferrari in the first place, or John Elkann, depending on who you think. But I think Vasseur will protect Hamilton quite a lot from the politics, particularly initially.
I agree, and also Hamilton going there has given Vasseur some currency in Ferrari as well. It's boosted his position to get him to sign as well. So of course, yes, he'll be protected. But and look, I'm not suggesting for a second that that's going to be a major issue. I think Lewis Hamilton's too good for his performance on track to be any kind of real concern. I'm just saying that all I was trying to get across was that any move for any driver from one Formula One team to another is difficult. It takes time to get everything sorted out exactly to one's specifications. If you remember back when he moved to Mercedes, he was talking about having to make changes to the steering wheel and how that operated and so on and so forth. So there's always these little things that make drivers less comfortable. Fernando Alonso, when he moved to Aston Martin, talking about the steering sensitivity and what he wanted, that took half a season to sort out and get him to be comfortable. Of course, he was still beating Lance Stroll, but Lance Stroll's not Charles Leclerc. So it's just he's an incredible driver, an incredible talent, and amazing on every level in Formula One. But it's not easy to move to Ferrari and suddenly integrate yourself to be working at your optimum from the very, very beginning, the very first race of your very first season.
It's a tantalising prospect, though, isn't it, for next year? Hamilton in a Ferrari up against Charles Leclerc. I think that is going to be one to absolutely tune in for. But this season is also going the way to be tuning in for week in, week out now. We're currently under red flag conditions after Charles Leclerc's Ferrari span into the wall on the exit of turn 4. The Ferrari driver okay and back into the pit lane. The car not so much, and the barrier still being repaired. Session will resume at 5:32 local time. So in a couple of minutes we'll get back underway. And by the way, in that time, there's actually a new way to listen to all of the BBC Formula One coverage. Now, we can't say specific smart speaker brands because that's the new way you can listen. So imagine your smart speaker is called Benny, and all you need to do is ask Benny to ask BBC Sounds to play Hungarian Grand Prix Practice 2, and then you'll be able to listen on your smart speaker of choice, wherever you are, in the house, in the kitchen, in the living room. You want to move around freely. If you've got one of those cool systems that flows all through the house, then you can get us in 4D. Is that a thing? Yeah, anyway, it's a great way to listen to the last half an hour of free Practice 2. All you have to do is ask Benny to ask BBC Sounds to play Hungarian Grand Prix Practice 2. And then we're all in for a treat. 29 minutes and 10, 9, 8 seconds remaining until the end of Practice 2. And in just about a minute's time, we'll get back underway as they are lining up in the pit lane, ready for the green light at the end of the pit lane to get this session back underway. Now, we talked a lot about Lewis Hamilton really kicking off the driver market. And Beck, it seems confusing to talk about Sergio Perez, a man who renewed his contract or extended his contract a few weeks ago, to suddenly the rhetoric being, well, he might not even see out the season. Is he going to see out his new contract? What's going on there? Why suddenly have Red Bull and Perez come under so much pressure over this contract renewal? What happens next?
Well, I didn't understand at the time why they renewed it when they had. He wasn't exactly performing, and he certainly hasn't performed since he signed it. What we understand is that there is a performance clause in the contract. So if Perez is not within 100 points of Verstappen at the summer break, then the performance clause is triggered and he can be released. I think the gap at the moment is 137. So I think, well, it's not like Verstappen's going to retire the next 2 races and Perez is going to win them. So I think it's fair to say that the 100-point gap will be higher than it needs to be for him. He's just not performing. And the thing, going back to the point that Benny was making earlier about Hamilton's contract with Mercedes, contracts don't actually mean anything in F1, it feels like. Mercedes could have given Hamilton a 2-year contract, put some kind of clause in it, and it would have made him happy, and then you can get out of them anyway. It's the same thing with Perez. I didn't understand why they signed it in the first place. It was a 2-year, it's a 1+1, but it's basically a 2-year deal. Then they put in this performance clause. I'd love to know the inner workings, and no one's been able to get to the bottom of it, of exactly why they did sign this contract. But that is now, Hamilton kicked it off with Ferrari. Perez potentially losing his seat is keeping silly season in full swing. We currently have, I think, 6 seats available, but actually it could be 7. So yes, the driver market is alive and well.
So, I mean, on the basis, if you take it word for word from this supposed clause in the contract, performance clause, Perez is done then. If he's 137 points back from Verstappen and he is in the constructors 6th, in the driver's title, I should say, 6th, behind both McLarens, behind both Ferraris. Who, though, do Red Bull look at to put in that car? That's then the second question, because it's not the easiest of decisions. You've got a Carlos Sainz still loitering about on the market, unwilling to make a decision, and you've got 2 young guns in the junior team. Well, you've got 1 young gun in Yuki Tsunoda, and 1 guy's clinging on for dear life at Daniel Ricciardo. You've got Isaac Hadjar in Formula 2, who suddenly Christian Horner has started talking about a little bit more. There's Ayumu Iwasa, who's in Super Formula, but it seems like he's been a bit forgotten recently. So they've got options as well as other drivers on the grid.
Liam
Lawson, let's not forget, who replaced Daniel Ricciardo last year for a 5 Grand Prix with after Ricciardo's injury. Do you put any of them in?
So Carlos Sainz is the interesting one, isn't he? Former Red Bull, part of that stable. He has definitely delayed making a decision because we all thought, I think it was the end of May was the initial deadline for the Sauber Audi deal. They wanted him to sign by then. He hasn't. They've keep extending it. I think it's just on the table waiting for his signature. And the reason he hasn't signed it is because Sainz is now being linked again to the Mercedes seat. Toto Wolff came out, having been very hot on Antonelli at the start of the year, now not so hot, is now saying that Sainz is actually still potentially in contention. So he's got a race-winning seat in Mercedes potentially available. Perez, this clause could be about to kick in, so then you've got not just a race-winning seat, a championship-winning car could become available for Sainz next year. And then you get the headache of, well, let's be honest, that's Verstappen's team, so do you end up with the headache of having two drivers pushing each other and not in a good way that the teams would want? So, but Sainz would give you the Constructors' Championship because you know he'll always be there to pick up the points when Verstappen has very rarely, but has a bad weekend, or if there's an incident, Sainz will make sure that he's got the car in the right place to pick up the wins like George Russell did in Austria. So he would probably be the first port of call for Red Bull if they are looking to get rid of Perez. But then you've got to look at Liam Lawson, don't you? But then is it too much of an upgrade? Like Tsunoda absolutely thinks the seat is his, definitely thinks it's his, was saying yesterday in Budapest that it would be weird if they put Liam Lawson in the seat.
I love that. So blunt from Tsunoda. But I suppose the other option is as Zhou Guanyu nearly does the exact same thing as Charles Leclerc, loses it on the exit of turn 4.
Yeah, mate, this Red Bull, man, what the
and that was Zhou Guanyu. So he went off on the exit of turn 4 through 5, lost the rear, and then nearly hit the Red Bull of Sergio Perez, slides across in front of the Red Bull into the runoff area. Lucky that both of them escaped that without too much damage. Zhou locking up all of his wheels and flat spotting them all, and Perez getting a face full of grass. And that was what Perez had to say on the matter of a Sauber spearing across in front of him. But Zhou Guanyu back on the move, as to Sergio Perez. So a little bit of a scary moment for Zhou there. But the other thing that this depends on, right, is Red Bull aren't going to get rid of Perez before the end of the season, are they?
Why not?
Okay, so they get rid of him in the summer break, because that seems the most logical thing to do. They're not getting Sainz because he's committed to Ferrari till the end of the year. So they have to look in their existing pool. Yeah. Daniel Ricciardo was brought in with the grand prospects of replacing Perez if he performed, but that hasn't happened. Tsunoda has outclassed him. Tsunoda has been given a contract extension at RB. Tsunoda's the logical choice to put in mid-season, and then you put Lawson into Tsunoda's seat to see out the rest of the year. Why are they overlooking Yuki Tsunoda time and time again? I can't understand it. Based on his year so far, you've put time and effort and commitment into this young driver. I don't know what the percentage is of, how much is he backed by Honda and how much is it Red Bull and the politics within that. But if you're going to give him a contract extension in RB, you obviously have some faith in him, because word on the grapevine is he had offers elsewhere. So what's up with that?
Yeah, well, I think if you're going to get rid of Perez in the summer break, that is definitely the most logical solution to it. You put Tsunoda in, and also you just give him a shot, right? He keeps mouthing off about how he's the best driver. He should be getting promoted. He's ready for it. He wants it now. He should get that seat. So give it to him. Make him prove it. Make him. He's got the F1 experience. It doesn't actually make sense to put Liam Lawson. I agree with Tsunoda on that point. It would be a bit weird to put Lawson in ahead of Tsunoda. You just keep promoting up. That's the best way to do it, right?
Producer Paddy wants to start the rumour that Sebastian Vettel is going to come in for the last half of the season in place of Sergio Perez. Can we see that happening?
This is why Paddy's not on air.
And then Sainz joins. So what? So Sainz Vettel line up for next year. Is that what producer Paddy is saying? Oh, Vettel fills the gap. Oh, okay, so sort of half a retirement, dips a foot back in, just gets to the end of the year. That would solve a lot of problems.
Well, Vettel didn't burn any bridges when he left Red Bull, amazingly, went to Ferrari. He still has a very good relationship with Christian Horner. So yeah, maybe, why not? Let's start that rumour. I'll let Paddy start that rumour.
Just to reiterate, that is an absolutely pure rumour with no basis or evidence to it from our producer, who is loving every minute of this. Okay, so if Tsunoda stays in RB next year, which, well, we've got the contract for it, Daniel Ricciardo, does he stay, does he go?
He has to go.
Has to go. So logically then...
That hurts me to say, by the way, but it has been, his return has been disappointing.
It's a shame, and it hasn't lived up to anyone's hopes and dreams. So next year, it seems logical to say RB is Tsunoda and Liam Lawson.
Yes, but there is no logic in F1.
No, that's a very good point, well made. The other rumour we're hearing is this second seat at Audi still being left open for a Carlos Sainz. Of course, it will be Sauber next year before it becomes the full works Audi project. But I'm also hearing rumours of Liam Lawson being in the frame for that as well, if Red Bull can't give him a race seat within their two teams. Could that be a good option? Lawson and Hulkenberg?
It's not a terrible option. You've got the experience in Hulkenberg, and then you've got the young, hungry guy in Lawson, who, as you said, he has had a bit of experience, 5 races covering for Ricciardo when he broke his hand. Yeah, it's possible, but then what do RB do? They're just going to stick with Tsunoda and Ricciardo. I just don't see Ricciardo staying in that seat. I don't see how he could, based on current performance. I think, to be honest, the only way he is still in that seat is because of his relationship with Christian Horner, and Horner it was his call basically to put Ricciardo back into that seat, and they are very close. And I think that's what's kept him in for probably as long as it has, and probably longer than it should have been.
Hashtag BBC F1 Dean has said, buy Hulkenberg out of his Audi contract and chuck him in the Red Bull.
No.
Why?
Hulkenberg is having a good season. I don't discount that. For me, though, I think he's a very good midfield driver, but I don't think he's a top team driver.
Will he finally get a podium with Audi?
Of course not.
Beck Clancy, editor-in-chief of Autosport, speaking there on Nico Hulkenberg. But I brought this up in FP1, and I don't think it's the most ridiculous thing in the world, and I'm going to really start peddling this. Kevin Magnussen is out of a seat at the end of this year. He has been informed that his services will no longer be required by Haas. And I think a lot of people are a little bit sad about this. It's not like it's a surprise. It hasn't been the best year from him compared to Hulkenberg's stunning year. But you've got a driver that's been around the block, has shown he's a team player. I mean, he's 2 points away from a race ban, so he's a team player. Hasn't really got masses to prove anymore. Has seen a life outside of F1. Knows he's got options, whether that's sports car, Indy car, whatever it might be. Surely Red Bull could go, you know what, Magnussen, do you want to have a year or two in the Red Bull, see how you get on? Decent pair of hands, decent pace. Okay, he'll probably be a few tenths of a Verstappen, but I think that's not the worst decision in the world.
I should probably back myself from what I said earlier. If Hulkenberg isn't good enough to get into the Red Bull seat,
exactly, but that's not what you thought in FP1.
Well, no, I see the argument you're making. A bit of experience. He's not going to ruffle any feathers. He's not going to have a problem with Max Verstappen being the number one driver. As you say, he's on 10 penalty points at the moment, 2 more, and he gets a race ban. And I think it's the full calendar year, so he's got to get to the end of the season basically without upsetting anyone. And most of those points, I would say, he has scored from taking one for the team. So, yeah, it's a difficult... I'm more confused as to why Haas have got rid of K-Mag, and now it looks like they're going to replace him with Ocon, who, quite frankly, is not a team player and has been let go from Alpine. The timing, they say it wasn't because of Monaco, but the timing was very much after Monaco when he crashed into his own teammate. So Ocon has a tendency to fall out with people, fall out with teams, fall out with teammates. So I'm more confused by that decision, if I'm honest.
Yeah, it is a highly rumoured that Ocon and that deal to Haas being done, although nothing is done until it's been announced, and even then it might not even be done. 16 minutes and 16 seconds remain of free practice two. It's Lando Norris currently fastest with a 1:17.788, just over 2/10 ahead of Max Verstappen. Carlos Sainz is third, Sergio Perez, George Russell the top five. Magnussen, talk of the devil, is up in sixth ahead of Hamilton. Ricciardo, Albon and Alonso make up the top 10. Bottas is 11th ahead of Sargent. Piastri 13th, then it's Ocon, Hulkenberg 15th ahead of Gasly. Stroll is 17th. Charles Leclerc no longer in this session after crashing out in his Ferrari. He is okay, he's back in the pit lane. 18th, Tsunoda 19th. Zhou Guanyu, who just had a mighty moment, very similar to Charles Leclerc, coming through the fast left-hander of turn 4, losing control of his Sauber and 360ing across and in front of Sergio Perez. Neither car getting any major damage, but certainly a scare for Zhou Guanyu. He's 20th and last. So everybody out at the moment who is out there actually, is on the medium. Lando Norris on the hard. Carlos Sainz on the medium, so too is Kevin Magnussen. Alex Albon on an outlap as well, also on medium tyres. Gasly's out there on the soft and Joe is on the medium. So we'll get an idea of some of the long run pace in the closing stages of this final practice session of the day. Of course, we have FP3 tomorrow ahead of qualifying for the Grand Prix. The sound of Lando Norris making his way through turn 1. And of course, this is the scene of Norris's podium smash from last year. Was it last year or 2 years ago? It was last year. And smashing the trophy. And he's kind of celebrating that with his helmet, isn't he, Beck?
He didn't smash his own trophy. He smashed Verstappen, who won the race. Norris was second. It's made by a company called Horrend Porcelain. And as an apology, Lando Norris got them to design his helmet. And I'm going to put it out there, I think it's my favourite ever helmet design. Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful. It's
a nice porcelain design, isn't it? And certainly striking. And celebrating that moment for Lando Norris. It was. I was doing the kids commentary for that weekend, and I didn't. None of us noticed it except for Scarlett, who was one of the young kids doing it. She was the first person that brought it up and asked Lando Norris in the interview pen afterwards. So she broke that to the world, and we all missed it. But currently making his way around in that top spot. But he's on the hard tyre now, so getting an idea of how that long run pace is going to look. Meanwhile, a lot of work going down on Oscar Piastri's car, and it is up on the jacks, and work all 4 corners off of that car. Andrea Stella watching from the pit wall, looking a little bit concerned, but just in concentration mode. Piastri down in 13th. They did have a bit of an issue in FP1, but seemed to get that sorted. And just getting another look at Lando Norris. Thought he had a moment coming through turn 4, but no. It's just running out wide here. You can really pick up damage on some of these aggressive curbs that kind of, I suppose it's a track limit deterrent as well, that keep you within all 4 wheels of that white line. But it is currently Lando Norris who is fastest of them all. Hamilton making his way around in 7th, just heading out on an outlap at the moment. He's currently down, in 7th. Then it's Ricciardo, Albon and Alonso. Let's look at the lower half of the field quickly, because that's where we're seeing, actually, Alonso is 10th, but Stroll is down in 17th in the pits. Now, they've got a big upgrade this weekend. They ran it all on Alonso's car in FP1. Stroll has now got it for FP2. And on that upgrade, I mean, it's a front wing, halo, floor, diffuser, beam wing. Double point score last time out at the British Grand Prix. But it's been a bit of a weird few races for Aston Martin. They seem to, again, a bit like Ferrari, have gone backwards in terms of their development. Look back to that upgrade they brought in Imola, and it really didn't yield what they wanted. Alonso actually uncharacteristically making an error during one of the sessions of finding the gravel. It's got big momentum behind this team. They've made some massive technical signings recently. They've taken Enrico Cardile from Ferrari for next year to be their chief technical officer, which is a massive signing. So it seems like they're putting a lot of things in place. But it's not at the moment quite translating consistently enough on the racetrack.
Not translating at all, actually. And I think Fernando Alonso said it best in FP1 when he was running the upgrades, and Lance Stroll had I think it was a Silverstone spec on his car, and the engineer asked Alonso if he could help at all with a bit of suggestion with balance, and he just responded, "Good luck," which is a bit like a bit of a wing and a prayer, I suppose, for Aston Martin at the moment. They're definitely not where we would expect them to be, particularly after such an amazing start to the year last season. Was it 6 podiums in the first 8 races, and they're having a bit of a shuffle around at the moment. They announced that Martin Whitmarsh would be leaving. Andy Cowell is coming in from Mercedes.
Do you think our expectations are too high because of that amazing start to last year? And now everybody's kind of caught up and got on top of the regulations a bit more. And
then they had a bit of a development issue. They fell away in the development race last year. They've arrived this season not where we would expect them to be yet, very much based off what happened last year. We absolutely know that they shut down the factory and kicked everyone out for a couple of hours while they gave Adrian Newey a tour, and we believe that contract is there waiting for a signature. He hasn't signed it. He hasn't said where he's going. He's actually not able to say where he's going because he's still contracted with Red Bull. I think it's September is when we're expecting to hear something. So they obviously have very big ambitions, but the car that they're producing at the moment isn't matching those ambitions.
Where do you think Adrian Newey's going to go? Because if Aston Martin have signed Enrico Cardiel, that's in the role we would have thought Adrian Newey would be in, right? He's currently Chief Technical Officer at Red Bull. So I imagine he'll be in a higher up. Well, so
I guess it's quite similar at the moment to what's happening at Red Bull. They've got Pierre Vacher, who is in that chief technical role, and Newey is kind of above that. I mean, Aston Martin apparently have offered him a £10 million pay rise, which is not too unfriendly. We have the budget cap, but the top 3 earners aren't included in that for obvious reasons. So, it's basically the team with the deepest pockets. We know that he was also over in Maranello. He had a meeting over there, but from what we understand, Ferrari are now not really a contender for him. So Williams were very interested. There was a lot of talk about the contract. They obviously don't have as much money as Aston Martin, but apparently there was talks of him getting an equity stake in the team, which we all know F1 how valuable it is now. Even the lower end teams are worth nearly $1 billion. So would have been worth more than £10 million a year, I imagine. So, but it does look like Aston Martin are the favourites. He lives in the area, that Motorsport Valley. We have Red Bulls based in Milton Keynes. Aston Martin are quite literally over the road from Silverstone. So it wouldn't exactly be a big upheaval. His wife, Amanda, apparently wants to stay in the UK as well. He's got to factor all of that, the family lifestyle in as well. So it does look like he's leaning towards Aston Martin, and that would be a hell of a signing for them.
I mean, it would be, wouldn't it? And what a coup for Aston Martin, who are making a lot of changes. As you mentioned, Andy Cowell also coming in as CEO to replace Martin Whitmarsh. So a lot of things going on in the back room at Aston Martin, with their wind tunnel also being developed too, and a massive state-of-the-art facility. They've knocked down the old Jordan Formula One factory and now have a massive campus just opposite, literally the main entrance to Silverstone Circuit. 8 minutes and 0 seconds remain of free practice 2, and most cars out there lapping in and getting the data for their race pace. Lando Norris setting the fastest lap time a little earlier on, a 1:17.7, 2 tenths ahead of Max Verstappen. Sainz third, ahead of Perez, who's 4 tenths behind Norris, so 2 tenths behind Verstappen. So slightly more encouraging signs for Perez. Russell fifth, ahead of Magnussen. Then it's Hamilton, Ricciardo, Albon, Alonso in 10th, ahead of Bottas. Sargent is 12th, Piastri 13th, Ocon, Hülkenberg 15th. Gasly 16th ahead of Stroll. Charles Leclerc out of this session after coming together with the wall, down in 18th. Tsunoda down in 19th, who has just come over the line on the soft tyre and has put in a 1:19.6, which is still only good enough for 19th place. So I don't know if Tsunoda's running high fuel or what, but he is not on the pace with teammate Ricciardo up in 8th at the moment. Just getting a look at Tsunoda coming through the final corner.
Let's go. Touch off. Okay, don't rush me.
not wanting to be rushed is Yuki Tsunoda when building up for that lap. So Tsunoda done in 19th, only ahead of Zhou Guanyu in 20th. So always difficult to get any kind of gauge during practice. But we'll have a little more information come the end of this session in just under 6.5 minutes' time. The two Williams drivers, Alex Albon in 9th, Logan Sargent in 12th, and Logan Sargent is cutting a bit of a lonely figure at the moment, isn't he? I don't feel sorry for many Formula One drivers, but I do feel a bit for him. He's clearly been told, and the media scrutiny just gets bigger and bigger every race, that he's not at the level that he needs to be to keep that seat in Formula One.
No, he's not very good, is he? I mean, it was a bit of a surprise.
Say it how it is, Beck.
It was a surprise that he kept the seat this season. I mean, we all know why. He comes with a very healthy wallet, or his father does, and they need to replace him, let's be honest. And it looks like they are taking quite a difficult decision to do it mid-season. That's tricky. Sargent looked broken, let's be honest. He looked defeated yesterday during the media sessions, and it's almost as if he's been told already that this is it. He's not going to be around. We know that Ocon actually was at Williams getting a seat fit, not for this season. Obviously, he's still contracted as it is at the moment with Alpine. So yes, but Williams very much looking to replace Sargent, probably in the summer break, possibly with Kimi Antonelli, give him a bit of an F1 outing if they could. It looks like the writing's on the wall for him, and I agree, I don't feel sorry for many F1 drivers, but just seeing him yesterday, I did feel for him.
There were rumours a few rounds ago that he might well go to IndyCar, Logan Sargent, with maybe the Prema team, who are entering that series in America's premier single-seater series. So I'm sure there'll be life after Formula One for Logan Sargent, because you don't get to Formula One, you don't get within touching distance without being half decent. And it's just amazing how bad you can look, even though you're amongst the top 20 in the world.
Yeah, you can't actually. We call them paid drivers, and you think you can buy a seat, but you can't literally buy a seat. You have to get the super license points to be allowed to race, which means you have to be of a certain quality to be able to move into F1.
I couldn't, with my 8 billion, just swan into Sauber and go, hi guys.
No, sorry, you're in the wrong gig. You have to get the points going through the different championships, F3, F2. You accrue the points over the time, and we had it, didn't we, with Herta? Yeah, he didn't have the points needed. It's a bit, the point system is a bit different in the States, but they wouldn't make any exceptions for him. And I think that's right. I think you have to be a certain caliber. There is, without question, there is a safety issue here. If you're not up to scratch, if you're not checking your mirrors, if you don't know how to race at this level, you absolutely shouldn't be on the grid. So he is of a certain level. Yes, okay, the finance has helped him progress from F2 to F3, but it's like you say, it's amazing how bad you can look.
Well, it will. We could get into a whole debate about super license points and how they're weighted amongst the categories, but we've only got a few minutes left of free practice 2, so we'll have to save that one for another time. But Russell is the sound you can hear at the moment, just making his way around turn 5, brakes down through the gears for the chicane. 6 and 7 now making his way through the final sector. A little bit of traffic in front of him. That was Yuki Tsunoda, who gets nicely out of the way with just 2.5 minutes left on the clock, and we can get a little bit more of an insight into where we're at the moment, Beck.
Well, it's not coming from me, it's going to come from my favourite time of day. If you were teeing up a nap, maybe now's your time.
Long Run Corner with Andrew Benson.
You can go the distance, we'll find out in the long run. In the long run.
I shall ignore that little remark, Rebecca, and give you the long run corner. There's actually some interesting data. I know you will love a bit of long run data. We've only got 3 or 4 cars that we can compare on like-for-like tyres. That's the 2 Red Bulls, George Russell's Mercedes and Carlos Sainz's Ferrari. And Russell is fastest by about a tenth on average from Verstappen. It was actually Perez is quicker than both of them, but there's something wrong about that because it's Sergio Perez, so I'm just ignoring that for now. So there must be some kind of offset in the data there. Norris is out on the hard tyre. He's quicker overall on the qualifying lap, but you can't compare medium and hard, different tyres, but he's lapping at around about the same pace as Russell. Hamilton on the soft tyre is slower, but then you'd probably expect that on such a hot day. So yeah, Russell slightly the quicker on the long run so far.
Thank you, Andrew Benson, for long run quarter. Brutal from Andrew, though. You can't just ignore Perez.
Yes, you can. I love the fact that it was Perez, and so Perez is so bad that he's doubting his own math.
There must be something wrong with the data. The numbers don't add up. Can you imagine, though, what if suddenly this is Perez's weekend? Pole, win. Does that change things in an instant for Sergio Perez?
Well, we know he's got it in him. We absolutely know he is capable of putting it on pole. We know he's capable of winning races because he's done it. He's won some of the hardest races. I mean, he won in Monaco. That's not an easy thing to do. And no, I don't think it would save him. I think what the Christian Horner said, that the current performance was unsustainable. So he would absolutely love to see Perez up there on the top step. But I'm going to agree with Benny on this one. I don't know if I believe the data. Oof.
Lando Norris just nearly had a very big moment in the pit lane, making his way round the right-hander. It sort of mirrors the inside of the final corner and just nearly lost it and headed into the wall. Just about saved it and then quickly stamped on the brakes, locked up the front left tyre to get down to the pit lane speed limit, and off he went to live to fight another day. And that brings out the checkered flag. Clock has counted down to 0. And at the end of it, it's Lando Norris, fastest of anybody. 2 tenths clear at the top with a 1:17.788. Max Verstappen in second, ahead of Carlos Sainz, Sergio Perez and George Russell, the top 5. Kevin Magnussen standing out in 6th, ahead of Hamilton. Ricciardo is 8th, ahead of Albon and Alonso, rounding out the top 10. Valtteri Bottas 11th, ahead of Logan Sargent. Oscar Piastri, who was kept in the pit lane for quite a while in his garage. We're hearing there was some floor issues being repaired on that McLaren, down in 13th. Ocon 14th, ahead of Nico Hülkenberg. Pierre Gasly 16th. Lance Stroll 17th. Charles Leclerc, who crashed out about half an hour into this session, coming through the fast left-hander of turn 4, lost his Ferrari into the wall. The driver making his way back to the pit lane. He was fine. The car, not so much. The barrier also needing some repair work too. Yuki Tsunoda 19th, and Zhou Guanyu, who almost had a very similar moment to Charles Leclerc, but just about avoided any contact with the barrier, and indeed Sergio Perez, who he cut across, down in 20th and last. That is free practice 2. Beck, your main takeaways after this first practice day ahead of one final one tomorrow and qualifying on Saturday?
Don't read too much into practice.
I don't read into Sergio Perez's numbers.
Yeah, I'll steal Benny's line. I just don't believe it.
Well, look, thank you very much, Beck Clancy, Editor-in-Chief at Autosport. You can join us again tomorrow for Free Practice 3. We're on the BBC website and app all weekend long. We'll be on air tomorrow from about 11:25 in the morning for Free Practice 3. And qualifying, who will be on pole position for the Hungarian Grand Prix, well, we'll be on air from 5 to 3 in the afternoon ahead of the session starting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and that will be on the BBC Sport website and app, or you can ask your smart speaker to ask BBC Sounds to play Hungarian Grand Prix qualifying. And we should pop up, hopefully. Practice starts being done, but that is it for Friday at the Hungaroring. Lando Norris fastest, ahead of Max Verstappen and Carlos Sainz. We shall see you tomorrow. This has been an ING production for BBC Radio 5 Live.